I'm Dalton Potter, and today we're talking about the importance of high quality wood in the process of making musical instruments, specifically violins in this case. Well, there are people who are very special suppliers. That's all their whole business is cutting wood and seasoning it properly. I'm afraid that I'm a little bit of a snob when it comes down to it, and maybe it's because I'm not as young as I once was, but I feel that I don't have time to make instruments with green wood. I really have to find the oldest stuff you can find, and basically you do that by talking to other violin makers and people who've been in the business. And the violin trade, as a rule, tends to be multi-generational. So people who get into the business, their families tend to continue the business for several generations. So you can find people that, you know, their grandpa had some wood back in the day and they haven't used it yet, and with the proper amount of inducement they'll turn loose of it.
So are we running out of woods? Is that going to be a scary problem 10 years from now?
No, not at all. Actually, we're starting to, the research, the most current research actually focuses on specific density of the wood as opposed to how old it is. And there are many makers. We just got done with a big conference in Cleveland, the Violin Society of America. Many makers now are using newer woods, but they're very picky about the specific density of the wood, you know, per cubic centimeter. And what we're finding is that they're getting amazing results. The person who won like 3 gold medals, one for tone, one for workmanship, and I play maybe setup or something like that. He was not using extraordinarily old wood. He was just using what was available. You have to remember that wood is really a crop, like corn or cotton or anything else. It just takes a little longer to grow. But you know, every winter, people have a Christmas tree in their house, and that's just something that's been growing for about 4 or 5 years, and just some pine.
So can you tell about the density by just looking at a piece of maple for the back? I mean, do you look for the
Can't tell by eye.
Okay.
You can see how beautiful it's going to be when you put varnish on it by eye, but you can't tell how it's going to resonate, and you can't tell how much it weighs until you start, you know, cutting it. And there's ways of measuring things and weighing it, you know, and you say how thick it is. But in the old days, they would do a float test where they actually literally had a bucket and they would put it in the bucket and they would draw a line and see how far up it floated. Like for instance, I have 2 pieces of wood right here, both of which are going to be extraordinary. This one,
How can you tell?
well, you should be able to see these little curly lines in there, and people call that tiger maple or curly maple, and it's just it's something about the way the wood grows. And there's other kinds of woods like poplar that also have curls in them. Okay, now this is a very old piece. You can see it almost looks like it's kind of tobacco stained. It's been sitting around for so long. And this is relatively lightweight. This is another species of maple that's also very curly. You can see that when it gets cut, it's going to be very curly. But this is a really heavy piece of maple. Really heavy. And even though it's also just as old, for some reason, this one says 24 years. It's not as old as this, but it should be ready to be used. I think I'm going to wait on this one for a while because I'm just waiting for it to lighten up. The thing to understand is that when they cut the wood down, most of the weight that's in it is water, and they can make the water evaporate pretty quickly because water is a very small, simple molecule. It's only, you know, 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. And they move around really quickly. That's why you can boil water and it evaporates from being snow into being, you know, water vapor. But inside trees, there's also big molecules made of sugars and hydrocarbons and things, and those take a lot longer to get out. That's why you walk into an old farmhouse and it has pine floors, and it smells like wood. Oh, this is great. This house smells wonderful. Well, what you're smelling are molecules from the pine in the floor that have probably been in that floor for 100 years, and they're still coming out. So you're seeing this, you know, evolution of the wood. But that's why when they find old churches and stuff, they start tearing them down. All the crazy violin makers show up and start digging through the trash. But it's a great adventure. no question about that. But the results speak for themselves.